Welcome back, campers. I'm Jersh,
And I'm Mears.
and we are the Modern Campfire Crew, huddled around our computers to talk all things movies. In this episode, we are going to review the hotly anticipated Dune Part 2. If you're new around here, make sure you like the video if you enjoy our conversation and subscribe. So Dune Part 2 is the second part of the Dune book adapted for film, which was directed by Denis Villeneuve. He co-wrote the screenplay with John Spaltz, and it's based on Dune, which was written by Frank Herbert, which originally released in 1965. The film stars Timothée Chalamet, Zendaya, Rebecca Ferguson, Josh Brolin, Florence Pugh, Austin Butler, Batista, on and on. Stacked cast. I thought that what we should do is first share our overall familiarity with Dune, if we had ever read the books before, and briefly discuss what we thought of the first movie before we even start the discussion of the second movie. So I'll ask you first, and then I'll share my Dune familiarity and my Dune 1 thoughts before we get into the back and forth for the sequel. So familiarity overall with Dune, and what'd you think of part 1?
So, Dune, my dad has always been a huge fan of Dune. From before I was even born, he was a fan. He's read the books, seen all the adaptations. There was the David Lynch movie from the 80s, which
Mm-hmm.
I've actually never seen. I've seen like the first 20 minutes of, I think.
Okay.
I have it on DVD. I probably should watch it. Um, and then there were two like mini series on in the early 2000s that we watched together. Um, and then that's it. So I ever since I was a kid, it's always confused me
Mm-hmm.
exactly what's going on, but I always knew that like there's spice. And whenever people consume it, it turns their eyes blue. I always knew about that. And I knew like the names of everybody and like just the basic, but there was
Okay.
always like things that just kind of confused me that I didn't fully get plot wise. Um, and then for Dune 1, I actually whenever the movie started, whenever Dune 2 started, I had a sudden realization of I probably should have rewatched part 1 before watching part 2, and because I got to thinking about it and I couldn't really remember specifics from the first movie. Um like I remembered like certain characters and like the overall I guess plot of it, but there were some
Mm-hmm.
things that I was still a little cloudy on. I remember liking it. I was more impressed visually by it,
Yeah.
I think than anything. Um, and I remember thinking it was very long and how very easily I could have taken a nap in the middle of the movie and still been in the theater and
Mm-hmm.
with a nice long 2 hour nap. Um, and then so yeah, so I remember liking it, but that it was too long. And yeah.
Okay. So yeah, I'll briefly share I've never read the books. I didn't watch the David Lynch version. I didn't watch the miniseries. I've heard of it. I think it's called Children of Dune. Never watched it. My only relationship and introduction to the world of Dune is through the 2021 Part 1, directed by Denis Villeneuve. And yeah, I so at the time that I watched it, I liked it. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed my time with it. But the further that I got away from it, the less and less that I enjoyed it. I didn't really feel an attachment to the characters. I couldn't recall a lot of kind of emotional response. I just remembered, yeah, it looked gorgeous and it was very kind of complex, but understandable. So I kind of appreciated, like you said, it is a pretty deep subject matter. So the fact that they were able to smush so much information into a part 1, I did appreciate. I also felt that the first film was very slow with basically table setting and introducing characters and world with very little in the way of kind of plot or conflict or escalation or anything like that. It might shock you to know the first movie is almost an entire hour shorter than the second one. The first one's only an hour and 55 minutes, and this movie's 2 hours and 46 minutes. Yeah.
The first movie felt like it was 4 hours long.
Right. So heading into this movie, I actually didn't plan on watching it at all. The only reason we watched it is because we started up this movie podcast again, and so the way that we do reviews around here is we will do a spoiler free section where we do not spoil anything, and then we will do a spoiler talk section. The movie is still in theaters if you're watching this at the time of release, so if you want to save that until after you see the movie and come back, there will be time codes for the video so we don't spoil anything. Very spoiler averse around here. So let's get into our talk of Dune 2. The general premise, without spoiling too much, is that it is a sequel to Part 1. It follows Paul Atreides as he unites with the Fremen on the desert planet of Arrakis to wage war against House Harkonnen. And that's pretty much all you can say without spoiling anything. So let me ask you, Mirrors, what did you think of Dune Part 2?
So I, again, this one was very, very long. I found myself checking the time several times throughout and thinking, okay, so we got 2 hours left. We got hour and a half left, hour left. Also like yeah, the trailers before was like super crazy long, which
30
also I
minutes of
was like, oh
trailers
my
is a
gosh.
crime.
My whole
Yeah.
day was devoted to seeing Dune.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I I liked that there was more going on in this one.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I I thought it's funny. I thought that the um the the plot not having to do with the main character was the more interesting part.
Okay. Keeping
Until
it
it got to
vague.
a certain
Sure.
point,
Mm-hmm.
when things kind of changed for that main character,
Yeah.
then that then their story got more interesting and I was a little bit more invested. Um, it, it, yeah, I probably would have liked it even more if I'd watched part one again because at the beginning of part two, I was like, I don't know who this is. I don't know what we're doing right now. Um, I remembered that like met up at the end of the first one, but I couldn't remember specifics. Um, and yeah, I liked it. I didn't hate it. I didn't love it. Um, I don't know if I'll really want to watch it again. I might rewatch certain sequences.
Okay.
I think that generally the performances were good. Some people were better than others, I think. And I'll get into specifics with that later. Um, yeah, I thought it was good. Again, beautiful, beautifully shot.
Gorgeous. Yeah.
The colors. See, I love like the oranges of the sand, and
Mm-hmm.
then against like the blue of their eyes, and then like the deep blacks, and then the really whites in
Yeah.
certain sequences. It was just like a really gorgeous movie. Um, yeah, I think I liked it, but it wasn't my favorite movie, but I didn't hate it.
Okay. So for me, I will say, for those that don't know, Timothy Chalamet is a terrible actor. He's one of the worst working actors in the world, and it's a crime that he has a career. Um, Happy for him, happy for his success. It is a travesty that he's in this movie. I really liked this movie quite a bit. I felt
Really?
that there was actually story, there was progression of plot, characters had arcs and progressed and moved things forward in a dramatic and real way. Again, no spoilers, but it's a complete story this time around. It finishes the story of part one, even though there is
Oh,
talks of a third film based on the second book, as long as the box office is strong enough, which all early indications are that it is. We are going to get a third film, which I'm actually really happy about
hmm
now. I could not have cared a week ago. I wouldn't have given a damn. Um, but yes, I thought that there was way more action. There's way more set pieces here. There's smaller skirmishes. There's big plot skirmishes. There's skirmishes and moments that are just for character growth and development that I thought that I really appreciated. And I thought again, yeah, the cinematography is beautiful. I actually watched it in IMAX. So we should have mentioned our screening.
Oh, yeah.
Wow, your microphone's
I
really
was
loud there.
Cinemark XD.
XD, okay. And I was going to go to XD, but because of the runtime and how early I needed to get out of there, I did end up seeing an IMAX. But my IMAX where I live, it's not a true IMAX floor to ceiling. It is a really big. It's like twice the size of a rate. It is an official IMAX, but I don't know if it's a true IMAX. I don't know what the dimensions are. Um, but no, I really liked it. I thought the story was a lot better. The character work was a lot better. The cinematography was as beautiful, if not more beautiful, and way more impressive because of set instead of characters just standing around in glossy hallways, we were out in the desert, out in the shit, fighting a war, and everything still stayed beautiful. You could track all of the action. I thought the pacing. I actually was never bored. I thought the movie could have been longer.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, I almost fell asleep a couple
Oh my
times. I
gosh.
really did. Yeah.
um I was just like, there's always something going on, whether it's character or plot or both. um I didn't give I made a joke in the Discord, like, gonna go see Dune, and I like posted a sandworm from Beetlejuice because I thought the sandworms in the first one, just the whole concept of it was dumb. I didn't like the look of them. I actually really like sandworms in this one.
Mm.
I liked how they played a role in the world building and in the plot and with the character work as well. I really liked how it wasn't just, you know, and again, Star Wars is going to come up a lot because Star Wars is a very derivative work. It's derivative of Flash Gordon. It's derivative of Dune. Very plainly, now that I've seen Dune 1 and 2, it's like, Jesus Christ, Star Wars really took a lot from these stories. But I feel like a lot of the world building, monsters, and sci-fi stuff, whether it's Star Wars or any other science fiction film, is kind of just set dressing to fill out the world. And these are like a part of the story. Like, the background is a part of the story. The environment is a part of the story. How the Fremen attack and defend themselves using the environment of the planet of Arrakis. How they utilize the resources that are available to them, and how they interact with the worms on the planet isn't just for decoration. It actually matters. So I kind of really appreciated that. I agree with you. The color palette was amazing. It really reminded me of Mad Max Fury Road with, yeah, the stark red and
Mm-hmm.
orange sand.
Mm-hmm.
And then this was in the trailer, so it's not a spoiler, but there's a couple black and white segments that are gorgeous to look at.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely gorgeous. I thought the supporting cast around Terrible Timmy was amazing. I loved Javier
Mm-hmm.
Bardem. I loved his character, like his dialogue
Yeah.
and sense of humor. And he
Mm-hmm.
just was like fully committed to that part. I thought Austin Butler was a very credible kind of bad guy and nemesis. Like, Jared Leto could never. Like, this is what Jared Leto's Joker wanted to be, except
Mm-hmm.
this fucking guy is actually menacing,
He
actually
was scary.
terrifying.
Yeah, he made me
Yes.
nervous. Every time he was on screen, I was like, "Oh my gosh, what's he gonna do?" Because he was just the things he was doing, like all the time, just like not a care, was like insane.
Yeah. And the fight choreography, again, it was really easy to follow all of the action, whether it was big set pieces or small hand to hand combat. I thought that it all was, like, again, captured beautifully, really easy to follow. It wasn't this shaky cam or, over stylized, and I have no idea who's hitting who and what's happening. You were able to follow it very clearly. So I really liked that as well. There are a couple of things that I definitely did not like about the movie. And I will get more into specific in spoilers, but I will briefly mention that, Hans Zimmer. I love Hans Zimmer. Love Hans Zimmer.
Hmm.
While I agree that the music fits the images of the movie, like, it does mesh well with the sequences that we're seeing, it doesn't have that melody or memorability of iconic themes, both in Hans's own history and in the history of film at large. You talk about Harry Potter, Lord of the Rings, Star Wars, Jurassic Park, Back to the Future, The Lion King, Inception. The list goes on and on. Every single movie that I just named, you heard a musical melody in your head, right?
Hmm.
And I can't hear jack shit when I think of the Dune music. And I tried listening to the soundtrack after I watched the movie, and I still was like, I don't ever need to hear this. You know what I mean?
I thought this one was better than the first one
I agree.
music-wise. The first one, the whole time, it was that woman throat singing,
Yeah.
like the whole movie pretty much. Like that was the only song that was
Mm-hmm.
in it, it seemed like. And
Yeah.
this one, that only happened like maybe once or twice, which I was happy about. But there was one song that I remember the most, which is the one that was at the end, and that melody there, I really loved,
Hmm.
and I think it's memorable.
Okay.
Yeah, I thought it was better this time.
Yeah, and there was more. Oh, and because there was a more richness to the movie. There was more opportunities to create varied sounds. So yeah, just it inherently is better overall music wise because the overall movie is doing more. So there's a more chance to write different musical pieces. Um, but yeah, Timmy, Zendaya, I just didn't care. I didn't. I felt like they had no chemistry. He uh, just is just
Yeah.
he's a dry piece of cardboard.
He was
Like
very dry. He was bringing it down for me. It was his scenes is like where I was feeling sleepy. Like honest.
yes,
And where the camera was just like really close in on his face. I was getting like I don't even and I'm not like I don't hate Timmy as much as you
as much as
do.
I do, right?
Um which I don't know, I'm getting there. I liked it before I met you, so I don't know what's gonna happen. But but yeah, I was noticing. I was like, he's been better in other movies I've seen him in, and I feel like now would be like the time for him to have like the performance of his career. Like this is the biggest movies he'll probably ever do. All eyes are on him. He's got this legacy on his back now, and I think he probably wasn't the best choice, or maybe looks wise, but I
Yeah.
just don't think he was the best choice for these, and I don't feel like he was able to accurately portray the character.
Yeah. Now, because he and Zendaya do have a fan base and do have a following, and their casting probably contributed to the budget getting approved to make these movies, I'm not bothered that they're in them. Like it's to the movie's credit that his terrible acting doesn't ruin it for me. I still really liked it, But there's a moment where a character says a line about kind of how devoted they are to Paul and like
Okay.
how far they're
Yeah.
willing to follow him. And I'm like, fucking based on what? Based on literally nothing. So yeah, but yeah,
Yeah.
I didn't care about. Finally, the Zendaya character in the back half of the movie finally gets some more interesting things to do, but there's nothing special that she as a performer brought to the role where I'm like, oh, that couldn't have been another actress. I could easily
Yeah.
imagine XYZ performer kind of going through these story beats, you know? I really like Florence Pugh. I thought she was amazing in Midsummer, even though I wasn't as high on that movie. I thought her performance in that film was incredible. Like that was my introduction to her as an actress, and I've really been interested in everything that she's
Oh,
doing since then. But similar to Oppenheimer, it's like she's not in the movie very much. She's like heavily in the
yeah.
marketing, but she's this film's Zendaya, where it's like, yeah, hopefully we get a third. There's more to that character, but there's not a lot here, right?
There
Um,
definitely is more to that character. Yeah.
mm-hmm. Um, and then the last thing that I will say in the spoiler free section is that even though I liked the overall pace of the movie and I liked how the action was shot, I felt that some sequences were rushed. Some things happened way too fast. Like we really build up to these big climactic moments and then they're just gone. Like there's a scene in the trailer, so this is not a spoiler, where a character is kind of walking up a mountain to kind of take in a large landscape view of a large gathering of people. Okay, the walk
Mhm.
up, the walk up to the scene was longer than the scene actually took. Like once that character gets to the top of the rock, it's like gone in 3 seconds. It was longer to actually walk there. I'm like, I didn't get to feel anything because it happened too fast. That's why I say like, I feel like it probably could have been a little bit longer to let some of those sequences and scenes breathe. But yeah, I'll toss it to you for any more spoiler-free thoughts, and then let's go ahead and give it a rating.
Um. Yeah. I was surprised that like because I was checking my phone, when it got to um like the runtime, and I
Mm-hmm.
was realizing that things weren't getting wrapped up. I was like, we're gonna do a third one? Because I always thought that it was like, okay, we're gonna do two, and like we're just gonna split the story up into two. So then, which I fully expect them, yeah, to do a part three.
Mm-hmm.
And I know like what that one's gonna be named, if they
Right. I
do
do. I
it.
do know the name of the book too. Yeah.
Um, and uh, yeah, it reminded me of the Spider-Man uh across the Spider-Verse, where like
Really.
we're here at the end, well in that we're here at the end of the movie. What are we gonna are we gonna hold it at, like, are we gonna wrap it up here at the end? Are we gonna go for a third one? Um,
Okay. I will.
yeah.
Since we're talking about the end, I'll save it for spoilers. But I'll say, I thought most the things that mattered wrapped up, and that I don't even know if you need a third movie. Um,
Oh, really? 'Cause
yeah.
I feel like you do.
But yeah, we'll talk about it in spoilers. So on our modern campfire scale, how many marshmallows are you giving this bad boy?
I'm gonna give it a 7.5 marshmallows, 7 and a bite.
Okay. All right. I keep going back and forth between an 8.5 and a 9. I'm going to see this movie again. That's how much I liked it. I'm going to see it
Oh,
again
wow.
in theaters because
Really?
it
Okay.
did feel like such it does feel like such a moment. I think as a science fiction film, it's a borderline masterpiece. As a movie overall, I do have enough issues with it where I'm not going to just throw that word around. But from a science as a science fiction film with the world building and the villains and the different variety of set pieces that you get and just the overall lore, it's like a very really cool sci-fi stuff that's like really fun to dig into for me. I do think I'm gonna go ahead and settle at an 8.5 just because I do have quite a bit of little teeny tiny criticisms here, and an 8 is excellent. It's above the competition of similar media or genre, but there are just a few issues that make it harder to recommend outside of people who are not pre-existing fans. So like this one, I mean, I might be able to say, it's a little too hardcore sci-fi if you like aliens. You know what I mean? Like there's maybe a little bit too much political intrigue going on, but it does really feel like a really good combination of Star Wars meets Game of Thrones, and I think that it's
Hmm.
overall this was a lot more interesting and fulfilling film than the first one.
Yeah,
So
for
with
sure.
yeah, so with that all being said, let's go ahead and have a quick spoiler discussion starting right now. Full spoiler warning for Dune Part 2. If you have not seen the film, we both gave it a positive rating, so I would recommend that you go see it in theaters, see it on the biggest screen possible. If you don't have an IMAX
Yeah.
near you, don't feel bad. Just at least see it in theaters. The sound, I didn't even talk about the sound mix in the spoiler free section. Incredible sound. Too
Hmm.
loud, almost, maybe. Um,
Yeah.
so, yeah, so this is your last full spoiler warning for Dune Part 2. You have been warned. So, Mirrors, from a spoiler perspective, what are some things on your mind about this movie that you want to chat about?
Um. Okay, we'll talk about little Timmy Tim. Um. So yeah. So all his stuff prior to him drinking the sandworm poison, to
Yeah,
me, I didn't care about.
yeah,
It really piqued my interest when it went into Austin Butler stuff, and it was more in like the Huracan. Is
Huracan,
that how you
yeah,
pronounce? Yeah, into their family, that whole thing. Leia Seydoux' role was interesting. I wish
yeah.
she had been in it more. She was only like 3 scenes, I think.
Harkonnen,
Um,
sorry. Or, yeah,
Harkonnen. I was
there's,
mixing that with Arrakis.
yeah, Harkonnen. Yep, sorry.
um, I thought that was very interesting with them. Um, I see. I was a little lost on like the whole spice production thing. I didn't really remember that from the first one. Um,
Yeah, so
like
Spice
why?
Spice is Dune's force. It's the Matrix. It's everything that's special about Dune revolves around spice. You can't travel in space without spice. If you eat spice, I guess it maybe gives you special powers. And this whole
Yeah.
planet is made of this resource, which is why everybody's fighting over it. Because you want to control. I think there's an opening quote in the movie. It's like those who control spice control the universe, or something like
Yeah.
that. And
Mhm.
backing up a little bit to Timmy's change after drinking some worm juice, um, I thought that happened really fast. It like flipped on a dime, where it's like, yeah, it was like, I don't know, I don't want to be a messiah, which I really liked kind of
Yeah.
that commentary on, the feeble-minded, the weak-minded being able to be preyed upon and force-fed a belief system, and then getting those people. I really liked how they talked about worship as a form of slavery, and um, but he was like really really against it, and then he drinks the worm piss, and it's like
Yeah.
uh, and again, it probably is because he opened his mind and saw the future, and now it's like, oh, I'm not even going to fight this anymore. I know exactly what needs
Yeah.
to happen, and what needs to happen is I need to go kill Grandpa, and I need to make Florence Pugh marry me and piss off Zendaya. Like
Mhm.
so. I just kind of wished. I don't know. I wish maybe that was explained a little bit more. That whatever the effects were, because it seems like the Force and midichlorians, they're just kind of throwing whatever they want. Like, well, now it helps you see the past. Well, now it helps you see the future. Well, now it helps you control other people's minds. Now it helps you talk in a really weird voice. It just kind of is an everything answer for all. Um,
Yeah, and he didn't really, because at first he was like pushing back against his mother because she was like, "You need to do this. You'll be there, whatever." And then it was Yachi, and then he was like, "Okay, I'll find. Okay, I'll go south." Like I didn't feel like there was much pushback from
mm-hmm,
him on going. Like from one scene, he was like, "I'm gonna stay here. I'm not going south." And then it seemed like literally the next time that we saw him, he was like, "All right, I'm going south."
South is the only way.
Um, yeah. And then yeah, I think it was when Lady Jessica was there and we saw like how they get the what do they call it? The life water of life.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Um and
Worm juice.
so we see how they got, yeah, the worm juice. We see how they got it, and then she goes, "Oh, there's a guy that might try to come drink from it." And then like I think literally the next scene is him coming in there. I think that I think went a little too quick as well.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, it was very much like, "No, Zendaya, I love you. We're gonna fight this together. We're on the same page here." And then, "No, I'm gonna drink this." And then she was like, "What the heck?" And then
And
of
what I
course
loved is
went
like
from there.
he's like it's like maybe you could have pulled Zendaya aside and said, "Listen, I saw the future and this is going to hit you really hard, but we can't be together right now and I can't tell you why, but I'm just giving you that heads up because I'm somebody who's supposed to actually really love you." It's like, "Nah, you're
Hmm.
going to find out when I ask the other woman to marry me right in front of you."
Yeah,
Just
in
for
front of you.
it's like that
After
old
I just tell you
Simpsons.
I'll love you forever.
It's like
Like
that
that
old.
is totally mixed signals. She was
Yeah.
like, the look on her face was good though. Whenever he said that,
Yeah.
to Christopher Walken, who I did not know was going to be in this at all.
I
I was
didn't say it cuz
really surprised.
I didn't know it either. That's why I didn't name him in the cast. But he's
Yeah,
another con for me, where it's like the second I saw him, I'm like, oh, Christopher Walken. We're not in Dune. We're
he kind
at
of
Christopher
sounded like
Walken.
him. He sounded like himself a little bit. There was one line that he said I could hear it where he sounded like
Need
himself,
the
and it kind of took
spice.
me out for a second.
Yeah.
Yeah, we need the spice. Saul coming in, yeah, to get the spice.
Yeah.
Um,
I do. I want to talk about the worm riding sequences.
mhm.
I thought they were amazing.
Yeah.
And again, I don't give a shit about Timmy, but the power of Denis' storytelling and Hans's music and seeing him, run down that sand dune and jump onto this worm and then literally get like you're in a video game, like a POV perspective of riding the worm and going through the sand on an
Mhm.
IMAX screen. I was like, this is so fucking cool. I shouldn't like this, but I do. It's awesome. And then when he like does the close up zoom on his feet and you finally see him slowly kind of stand on his own, and it's this kind of endurance
Mhm.
test and proving himself, and Javier Bardem loses his shit. That's like made me kind of like
Mhm.
cheer in my head. I'm like, all right, let's go. Shit is happening. This is awesome. And then again, and two other instances that come to mind. Number one is when they literally use they use the worms as like a subway transportation system where they take his mom. They put her in like a little
Yeah.
bungalow and like, we just ride worms now. Do you want the L worm or the E worm? We're in New York, right? We're in New York riding worms.
And I was trying to work out like how they got that many people on the worm after we saw how Timmy did it.
Mm-hmm.
Like how did they all were they like holding her on that and they just ran and jumped on it and then just went through sand smacking them in the face? Like how did they get a whole like group of, men, women and children on there?
Yeah.
Um yeah, that was a really powerful scene, seeing him like kind of lose his grip throughout, and then having to, so there was the tension with that, having to re-grab, and then yeah, finally standing up, and then seeing him in the desert riding through, and then I think then it like cuts to like a cave drawing of, the
Yeah.
Messiah, and it looks exactly like that. I thought that was really good.
I mean, and again, only because I understand that this book came first does it not bother me that it's kind of so trite and kind of redundant with, oh, it's a chosen one, it's a prophecy, it has been foretold. We've heard that a billion times, it's like in the Matrix for my generation in the 90s. Like, but because I know that this book came first in the 60s, I'm like accepting all of it because I'm like, you were first. All these other stories that I just happened to consume in a different order were really inspired by you. So I'm cutting it that break. But even with that Messiah messaging and prophecy messaging within the story, I also love the conflict of like, he doesn't want to be it. He thinks it's a bad idea, and he knows that if everything happens the way that it's supposed to, there's going to be this giant holy war where billions across the universe die that he doesn't want anything to do with. But then a little bit of worm juice, and he's like, "It's all good. It's fine." Um, I did read in an interview that Denis said that the original intention of Dune was to be a cautionary tale for following charismatic leaders blindly and creating messiahs. So really, I don't know anything about the third book, so we cannot provide any future spoilers, but I wouldn't be
Yeah.
surprised if he's straight up a villain, like he becomes a villain and takes over the empire in the third one because of his bloodline. Luke, I'm your father. Does
Hmm.
it? What do you think? Does it matter that he has the bad guy's bloodline in him? Like, what do you think is the impact or meaning of that?
No, I don't think it's necessarily bad because we see that he's broken the cycle of, the Baron has these, nephews who are insane and are super violent. Well, I guess you could say maybe Paul is that way in a way, but he's not. They're like bad to be bad, and he's not that way, at least not right now. Like he actually cared about the Fremen, he cared about people. Um, and no, I think it serves as he has more like political power and more of a claim to
Okay.
like various thrones. So he's
Yes.
kind of like a king of all kings type thing.
Well, in the movie,
And
they're
so yeah,
very explicit about saying that bloodlines matter. Like the bloodline is secure. She gets pregnant with Thade's
yeah.
baby to make sure that they've got that bloodline. And so yeah, I think to your point that it can matter because there might be some of the bad guys who originally like are instructed to kill him who might not when they find out that he's that guy's grandson.
He's yeah.
Yeah, so that can matter.
And that's such an interesting who he is. Yeah, from that lineage, he's from the House of Atreides, and then also if he is to marry Florence Pugh's character, which I'm not going to say because I don't think that they named her, but I know her character name.
Okay.
Um, then that's a different line, and if they have a child, then that's like all those together, and that's like could be one of the most powerful, people in the universe. Um, so yeah, I think it is very, and I actually didn't know that that was his grandfather. I never knew that.
Yeah.
My I went what? My dad and he went yeah. He said you didn't know that? I went yeah, I didn't know. But he was
um
yeah, he knew the whole thing.
so let's talk about some conflict resolution. So he gets revenge for his dad's murder. It happens in this movie. Josh Brolin gets revenge on Batista, kills him. I thought kind of both moments were a little underwhelming. Um, on one hand, the Baron is in a weakened state, so it makes sense that Timmy would be able to just walk up and stab him and be done with it. But
He's already like dying. Yeah.
yeah, but again, like that Baron is one of the most physically and terrifying, imposing villains I've ever seen on screen before. With his giant body in that dark
Mhm.
cloak and that machinery and just the music that plays when he's on screen. Like he's fucking terrifying. But then it's just they hit him a little bit, they knock him on some stairs, and you stab him and he's dead. Like it's like I thought the villain. I thought I was supposed to be scared of these guys. And then again, like Josh Brolin trained Timmy. He's supposed to be like one of the best fighters in the galaxy, and Batista just turns around and just takes a stab to the throat, and it's over. There was not any fight or
Mhm.
anything. Um, but
Yeah.
on the flip side, the showdown between Thade and Paul at the end, where there's no music, it's just the sound of battle, and it's just person versus person, and they're just fighting. I liked how fast that fight was because it was like, again, these are supposed to be two really skilled fighters, which again, Austin Butler has an 8 pack and Timmy is 100 pounds soaking wet. So I don't know why this is even a competition. But um, it makes sense that two skilled warriors with these sharp weapons, the fight would not go on very long. But at least there was a fight. Um,
Yeah.
I also kind of wished Austin Butler, while his introduction like might be the sequence of the movie, just the starkness of the black and white and the fighting in the gladiator pit and
Mhm.
being mad or fighting somebody who's not drugged and making the helpers stay back so that he can literally just fight on his own and he's willing to die right now is just like insane.
Mhm. They took a
Um,
shield off.
yeah, uh, I thought it was really good character work in an action set in a fight sequence. You know what I mean? Um,
Mhm.
but I kind of wish we were introduced to his character earlier because I was getting like halfway through. I'm like, isn't Elvis supposed to be in this fucking movie? And it's like finally he shows up, and
Yeah.
and at first I was mad because I was like, oh, they're just setting him up to be another carryover. This is going to be another world building movie instead of actual fucking story to finish. You know what I mean? But then when they had the final showdown, I'm like, it's too soon. We just met you. So
Yeah.
yeah. Um, Yeah, and then I guess there was another worm sequence at the end where they blow up the mountain so that the worms can break through, and they ride in on three giant worms
Mhm.
to fight all of the bad guys, and that was like really epic and like really memorable, for sure. I wish there was some sort of souvenir I could buy to remember these worms, but it doesn't exist, I guess.
It wasn't there. I was If it was there
You were
at
gonna
the
get it?
concession stand today, I was gonna get it.
Oh
It
my
was not
gosh.
there. They had Ghostbusters popcorn. It's actually one of the Ghostbusters popcorn buckets. It's really good. But yeah, I was a little sad. I was definitely gonna get it for the meme, but
I when I went so I went when I went and saw Dune, I got the Slimer collectible Ghostbusters cup. Because I don't, again, I've never cared about Dune. I'm not invested in Dune. My only window into the world of Dune is these last two movies, and I don't care if I never see the first one ever again. I'm gonna rewatch this second one probably quite often in this life because I loved the
oh,
sequences, I loved the story progress. I never in a million years would have anticipated what happened with his mom. They join the Fremen, and it's like, be our new soothsayer, be our new
yeah.
leader, and then she like mind melds uh, with the old one and gets centuries of memories, and it's like that was fucking cool. That I didn't see that coming, and so seeing all of them take this kind of basically almost all of them except Zendaya take this kind of villainous turn because even Josh Brolin, who's supposed to be true of heart, is gonna follow Paul to the end, whatever Paul says to do.
Yeah.
I really feel like there might be some potential for that to come to a head where it's like you were the chosen one, Anakin. This isn't what I trained you for, right?
I have the high ground.
Yeah. But Batista, what a waste. Like he like barely had anything to do with this in this
He might
movie.
as well not even be in it. Yeah, because I found it interesting because I remember him being in the first one. I don't really remember. I didn't even remember that he like really even killed anybody.
Yeah.
But I remember like, oh, I remember that makeup on him, and I remember kind of and I was surprised because he seemed menacing in this, except for that one scene where like what is it? I think when they
When he kisses
it was just
Elvis's
like Paul and like
boot.
a couple. guy, well, that that
Oh.
too. But it was like Paul and a couple guys came up and start like kind of picking him off one by one, and then he turns and runs away. I'm like, you're
Mm-hmm.
supposed to be this like warrior guy, and yet you're running away.
Yeah.
And then
Like I
yeah,
said,
he
like
did it again with Josh Brolin, where it was just like a very like, why are you even here?
yeah, except for Austin Butler, except for Thade, there isn't really a menacing force from these villains who look visually imposing, but when push comes to shove, they're like non-competitive, which is really strange because like 5 minutes into this movie, like at the beginning of the movie, when the bad guys strangely float up the mountain with jetpacks
Yeah, that was
and the
cool.
music kicks in, I was like, this is fucking awesome. I don't, whatever else happens, I love this scene. It's like really alien and atmospheric. It had very like, I felt like I was being transported to another world. Um, but then, yeah, they just were kind of very pedestrian. I did really like the sequence with Timmy and Zendaya where they're hiding underneath the arm shadow to uh, be able to shoot
Oh,
rockets
yes,
at
yes.
the bug helicopters. I thought that was really cool. And something that stood out to me in the sound design was I loved how like after Zendaya shot the helicopter, you could hear her chuckle. She was like glad that she did. She's like, ha ha ha, ha. And then boom, big giant explosion. I thought that was really fun. Um, but yeah, I guess to bring it to the ending, the way that I
Well,
see it, a lot of the conflict and problems set up in that opening movie were resolved. Where we killed the Baron, we killed Austin Butler, we killed Dave Batista, we have the Emperor bent to our will, and I'm gonna take your daughter and rule the galaxy. And then I feel like just kind of the hand wavy, the other houses, aren't bending to your will just now. That almost kind of to me smacked of where we're going. We don't need roads. It's like you can just imagine the story continuing where, yeah, he has to fight them too, but eventually he continues his ascendancy. I'm not saying that you can't justify a third. I'm just saying if they didn't happen to make another one, most of the loose ends were tied up that were set up from that original. Getting the revenge, taking the power, coming into the fruition of his abilities with the worm juice. Like, pretty much, if there wasn't another movie, that would still. I was like really satisfied with the ending, where I'm like, finally, we things went somewhere. And yeah, there's potential for more story, and you could see, well, maybe it doesn't happen that way. But yeah, I kind of thought that last line of, Zendaya, and Zendaya kind of basically, walking away from him and being scared of him, um, was just kind of like really good. Imagine what could happen. Also with Anya Taylor Johnson or Anya Taylor Joy,
Joy, yeah.
um, she he like saw his sister grown up in a vision, and he like talked. Both he and his mother talked to his sister throughout this movie
Hmm.
while she was in her womb, and I thought that was a really cool kind of storytelling device and a like character work with the mom and Timmy and kind of learning about what they're afraid of that's going to happen in the future. And again, it's another it is a tease for the third, um, but yeah, I pretty much I enjoyed it quite a bit. What do you think of the ending? What do you think of the final fight between Thade and Paul? 100 pounds soaking
Yeah,
wet
I
Paul.
really his suit was even loose on him. Did you notice? Like his it was loose.
He's like wearing his dad's coat to work. Gotta go save the universe.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting where he Austin Butler was like um whenever he said Paul called him cousin, and he said this isn't the first time that I've killed a family member.
Right.
I thought that was like a nice cool menacing line. Um and then and I knew because I know where it's kind of a whole where the story ends up. I knew obviously that Paul wasn't gonna die
Okay.
there. So that kind of took away some of the I guess tension for me. But I didn't, he didn't come out unscathed. He got a couple nice stabs in on him. Um, yeah, I thought it was a good fight. At the moment there was tension. And yeah, I thought it was cool, and it was really tense whenever he brought Zendaya into it. It was like kind of walking over to her, like
Mm-hmm.
what's he gonna do with her? Um, but then I don't know what his plan was about that because he immediately gave it up.
I
Um,
thought I thought to really drive home the Messiah message, I thought he was gonna die, but then he was gonna resurrect with the power of the worm juice. And then like everybody was gonna
oh,
bow to him or something like that. Because in a lot of like religious stories, it's about conquering death and returning to life, um, and like being
mhm,
stronger than mortality, because you're not just a mere mortal, you're special. Um,
mhm.
but yeah, so and then when he got stabbed, which if I'm not mistaken, I feel like he got stabbed in a similar way that Josh Brolin said he could get stabbed in the training sequence in the first movie, where he's like,
I don't remember.
where, yeah, so like when they're training in the opening of the movie, Timmy's like, I got you. And then James Brolin is like, well, you'll be joining me in death. And he shows that he had another knife stabbed into Timmy's stomach.
Oh,
So it's
right.
like, so when Austin Butler stabbed him and assumed he killed Timmy, Timmy got to
Mhm.
do the same thing to him, where he's like, you'll be joining me in death then, but then he lived. Um,
Yeah.
uh, and I thought Austin Butler's choice to try to make his voice sound like Stellan Skarsgård, the Baron, I thought was really cool, and really
He
creepy
sounded a
sounding.
lot like Stellan. At first, I was like, are they using Stellan's voice? Because, knowing what I know about Austin Butler and his accents, um,
He gets stuck in him.
like, yeah, can you imagine if he talks like that, like to Kaya Gerber? He's like, hey, baby, and he sounds like Stellan Skarsgård.
Going through a
Yeah, I was like,
drive-through.
uh-oh.
um, but yeah, so I was really pleasantly surprised by this movie. I'm glad I saw it on the big screen. Um, zero chemistry from the lead didn't ruin it for
No.
me because there was enough going on around him. I thought Rebecca Ferguson was great. Thought Javier Bardem was great. Thought Florence and her limited screen time was great. I thought Lea Seydoux was really mysterious. Austin Butler was a badass villain. Like a lot of really good positive things to say about pretty much everybody else except for Timmy and a little bit of Zendaya.
Hmm.
Zendaya the first half I didn't care. Like, oh, you fell in love because the story says you have to. Like you've barely known each other. You just met.
Exactly. Yeah.
you know. But yeah, I'm a little bit higher on it than you, but I think yeah, we both came out. Uh, I think I think it's easily better than the first movie. I feel.
Yeah, I don't even remember but I remember that thinking like it's very slow. There was just a lot of like I felt like there was a lot of sequences where like there wasn't a whole lot of action and it was just like look at where we are, look at this pretty place that we're at.
Yeah, yeah.
Um
A couple last minute thoughts. I really liked the characterization with the ring, where he puts House Atreides away while he's a Fremen, and then he brings it back out when he's fully come into his powers, and he's Fremen and Atreides and bad guy blood. He's like everything together, and he uses that same ring to print a letter, just like his dad printed a letter with the house iconography. And so I did like that kind of callback. I thought that was like really well done. Um, so yeah, that's going to do it for our review of Dune Part 2. Mears, why don't you bring us home?
all right, if you enjoyed this episode, please don't forget to leave a comment, like, or subscribe if you haven't already. Thanks for watching. Until next time.